After being fired for inefficiency following 30 years of service, a top NASA climate scientist publicly wondered if his life's work was a complete waste, prompting Elon Musk to declare a new kind of space race. The moment it happened, the internet fractured. The clip, ripped from a dry C-SPAN feed of a Senate subcommittee hearing, became the single most shared piece of media on the planet inside of an hour. It wasn't just a political jab. It was a cultural detonation. News anchors on every network interrupted their broadcasts, their producers screaming in their ears as they scrambled to pull up the footage. On X, the social media platform Musk himself owned, the exchange wasn't just trending. It was the only thing happening. Within minutes, the video of Elon Musk sitting coolly before a panel of senators had been viewed over 100 million times, creating a shockwave that rattled the foundations of the White House itself. 3 days earlier, the world was turning on a different axis. At the White House, Press Secretary Vincent Gallows stood at the podium, radiating the smug confidence of a man delivering what he believed was unassailable good news. He was a new appointee, chosen for his unwavering loyalty and his talent for framing President Trump's most brutal policies as strokes of populist genius. Today's topic was the Federal Workforce Optimization Initiative, the clinical branding for the largest mass firing of government employees in American history. For too long, the American taxpayer has subsidized a bloated, inefficient, and often politically motivated federal bureaucracy, Gallo announced, a slight smirk playing on his lips. President Trump promised to drain the swamp, and today, we can report that the swamp is significantly shallower. Phase 1 of the optimization has concluded, resulting in a 15% reduction in the federal workforce, saving the American people an estimated $40 billion annually. This is a monumental victory for efficiency, and for every citizen who wants their government to be lean, mean, and focused on America first. A reporter from a legacy newspaper shot back, "Vincent, can you speak to the fact that a disproportionate number of those laid off were federal scientists, particularly those in climate research at NASA and the EPA?" Gallo's smirk widened. "The president has been clear about his position on the climate hoax industry. We are optimizing for reality. We are prioritizing jobs in industries that actually exist, not ones based on alarmist fantasies." Next question. Hundreds of miles away, in a quiet suburban home outside Houston, Dr. Eris Thorne sat in his office, the world of the White House press briefing a universe away. His reality was contained in the four walls of a room, lined with bookshelves sagging under the weight of scientific journals and textbooks. On one wall hung a framed photo of a younger Eris standing next to the Sojourner rover, the first wheeled vehicle to explore Mars, a project he had poured his 20s into. Next to it was a photo of the shimmering blue dot of Earth, taken from the International Space Station, a constant reminder of what he was working to understand and protect. He was 62 years old, a man whose entire professional life had been dedicated to the quiet, methodical work of observing the planet. His specialty was atmospheric physics, translating the faint signals from satellites into comprehensible data about weather patterns, sea levels, and the delicate chemical balance of the air we breathe. He was not a politician. He was not an activist. He was a scientist. And for 30 years, NASA had been his home. An email notification pinged. It was from a generic address, noreply.hr.gov. The subject line was chillingly bland. Notification of employment status. He clicked it open. His eyes scanned the jargon. As part of the Federal Workforce Optimization Initiative, your position has been identified as redundant contribution to programmatic inefficiencies. Employment is terminated effective immediately. 30 years of service. 30 years of rising before dawn to check satellite data, of mentoring graduate students, of painstakingly writing and defending research that had been used to predict hurricanes, to manage droughts, to make GPS navigation a reality in every single person's phone. All of it was reduced to a single word: inefficiency. He felt a strange emptiness, a hollowing out in his chest. It wasn't anger, not yet. His profound and disorienting sense of nullification. Had any of it mattered? He looked at the photo of the Mars rover, at the image of the Earth from space. Had he just been chasing ghosts, collecting data that his own government would eventually label a fantasy? That evening, he logged into a private video call. It was for an alumni group from his alma mater, Caltech. About a dozen faces, all old friends and colleagues, populated the screen. They were checking in on each other, a support group for the newly optimized. One of them, a botanist from the Department of Agriculture, was talking about how her work on drought-resistant crops had been shelved. Seeing their faces, hearing their stories, something in Eris broke. It was his turn to speak, and the question that had been haunting him all day spilled out, quiet and raw. "I keep looking back," he began, his voice raspy. 30 years. We thought we were serving our country. We thought we were building a repository of knowledge for future generations. I look at my life's work. The papers, the models, the data, and the president's spokesman says it's all based on a hoax. That I was contributing to inefficiency. He shook his head, a look of deep, painful confusion on his face. Maybe he's right. Maybe we were just naive. What if it was all for nothing? What if my entire career was just a complete waste? He didn't mean for it to be a public statement. It was a confession, a moment of profound self-doubt, shared with trusted friends. But someone in the group, thinking the world needed to hear what was happening to these people, recorded his screen. Within an hour, the clip was leaked to a journalist, who posted it on X. Thousands of miles south, at Starbase in Boca Chica, Texas, the air was filled with the sounds of industry. Welders sent showers of sparks into the humid night sky as crews worked around the clock on the latest Starship prototype. Inside a Spartan office overlooking the assembly yard, Elon Musk was doing what he always did late at night, scrolling through X on his phone, mainlining information. He had seen the headlines about the federal layoffs. He'd even had a brief, curt exchange about it with the White House a week earlier, a conversation that had ended with him telling the president that firing rocket scientists was suboptimal. He had been invited to testify before a Senate subcommittee on federal workforce optimization, an invitation he had initially planned to decline. He had no time for political theater. Then, he saw the video. A user he followed, a prominent astrophysicist, had reposted it with the caption, "This is Dr. Eris Thorne. He is a giant in his field. This is what the government he served for 30 years has done to him. Listen." Musk tapped the play button. He watched the 62-year-old scientist, his face etched with confusion and hurt, ask the most soul-crushing question a person can ask themselves. Was it all a waste? Musk watched it once, then a second time. He leaned forward, his elbows on his steel desk. He saw the genuine anguish in the man's eyes, the doubt of a builder who has just been told his creations are worthless. He recognized that look. It was the look of every engineer who had ever seen their rocket explode on the launch pad, every innovator who had ever been told their idea was impossible. But this was different. This wasn't failure. This was erasure. Musk locked his phone and stood up, looking out at the massive silver rocket gleaming under the floodlights, a machine designed to push the boundaries of human knowledge. He turned back to his desk, picked up his phone, and dictated a short, sharp email to his assistant. Accept the invitation to the Senate hearing. Book a flight to D.C. The hearing room in the Hart Senate office building was arranged for a specific purpose, to project power. A massive, tiered dais elevated the senators above those who came before them. The chairman of the subcommittee, Senator Wallace Byrd of Alabama, was a staunch Trump loyalist with a folksy demeanor that masked a sharp political cruelty. He saw the hearing as a victory lap for the administration and a chance to rough up a political rival. The ranking member was Senator Anya Sharma of California, a sharp, data-driven Democrat who viewed the optimization as a thinly veiled purge of scientific and institutional knowledge. Elon Musk walked in precisely on time, wearing a simple dark suit, and took his seat at the witness table. There was no entourage, just him. The cameras flashed, a low hum of anticipation filling the room. Senator Brainerd began with a series of questions designed to paint Musk as a hypocritical corporate welfare king. Mr. Musk, Your companies, Tesla and SpaceX, have received billions in government subsidies and contracts over the years. Yet you were brought into the Trump administration to head the Department of Government Efficiency. Some might see a conflict there. How can a man who has benefited so much from government largesse be an expert on cutting it? Musk leaned into the microphone. Senator, a contract for services rendered, like launching national security satellites or building a resilient electric grid, is not a subsidy. It's a transaction. We deliver. The government pays. It's the definition of efficiency. What's inefficient is paying for a service you don't get. Or worse, paying people to dismantle the very systems that protect us. The answer was precise, deflecting the personal attack and pivoting back to his core principle. Senator Sharma interjected. Mr. Musk, let's talk about those systems. The administration claims these layoffs have made the government leaner, but thousands of scientists have been let go. What is the long-term cost of that kind of efficiency? Before Musk could answer, Senator Brainerd cut her off, turning to the White House representative seated next to Musk, Vincent Gallo. Mr. Gallo, perhaps you could enlighten the committee. Why was there such a focus on, shall we say, the scientific community in this optimization push? Gallo leaned forward, his moment to shine. Thank you, Senator. It's very simple. The president is focused on what's real. Tangible results. For decades, a portion of the federal bureaucracy has been captured by special interests pushing an alarmist agenda, particularly on climate. We had divisions of so-called scientists producing models based on hoaxes, creating problems that only more government spending could solve. He gestured dismissively. We had offices filled with tenured deadwood, people who haven't had an original or useful thought in decades, collecting six-figure salaries to predict doomsday scenarios that never come true. The president had the courage to say, enough. We have cleared out the deadwood and are refocusing our resources on American greatness. The phrase hung in the air, heavy and smug. Tenured deadwood. Senator Brainerd nodded approvingly. The camera zoomed in on Musk, expecting a reaction. He remained perfectly still, his face an unreadable mask. The trap had been set. The insult had been delivered. And the whole world was now watching to see what Elon Musk would do next. Elon Musk let the words, tenured deadwood, settle into the record. He didn't flinch or show a flash of anger. He simply tilted his head, a gesture of almost clinical curiosity, as if he were examining a flawed piece of code. He held the silence for a long, uncomfortable moment, forcing everyone in the room, the senators, the press, the White House aide, to sit with the sheer arrogance of the phrase. Senator Brainerd began to look uneasy, shifting in his oversized leather chair. Vincent Gallo, however, still wore his confident smirk, believing he had landed a decisive blow. Finally, Musk leaned forward again, his voice calm and even. Senator Brainerd, he began, may I have permission to use the main presentation screen? I believe a visual aid would be beneficial for the committee's understanding. Brainerd bristled immediately. Mr. Musk, this is a Senate hearing, not one of your product launches. We are here to discuss policy, not to watch a light show. With all due respect, Senator, Musk countered, his tone still mild, policy should be based on data. I merely wish to present some. Before Brainerd could issue a definitive refusal, Senator Sharma seized the opening. Mr. Chairman, the witness has a right to present his testimony in a manner he sees fit. The administration, through Mr. Gallo, has made a very serious and broad accusation. If Mr. Musk has evidence to refute it, I for one am very interested in seeing it. Unless, of course, the chairman is afraid of what we might learn. The challenge was perfectly aimed. Brainerd, a man deeply sensitive to any insinuation of weakness or fear, flushed a deep crimson. To deny the request now would look like he was hiding something. Fine, he grumbled, waving a hand dismissively toward the technicians. Put on your show, Mr. Musk. Just make it quick. Musk gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. He pulled out his phone, tapped the screen a few times, and a face filled the large monitor behind the senators. It was a high-resolution photograph of Dr. Eris Thorne, not the grainy screenshot from the leaked video, but a professional headshot from his NASA days. The man in the picture looked kind, intelligent, His eyes filled with a quiet sense of purpose. "This," Musk said, his voice cutting through the murmurs in the room, "is Dr. Eris Thorne. He is 62 years old. He has a Ph.D. in atmospheric physics from Caltech. For 30 years, he was one of the senior scientists at the Goddard Space Flight Center. Yesterday, the administration you represent, Mr. Gallo, called him Deadwood." Musk paused, letting the word hang in the air next to the scientist's face. He then turned his gaze directly to Vincent Gallo, whose smirk had finally vanished, replaced by a pallor of uncertainty. "This isn't Deadwood," Musk declared, his voice rising with a controlled fire. "This is the mind that helped us understand our own planet." "You didn't trim the fat, Mr. President," he said, looking straight into the main C-SPAN camera as if addressing Trump himself. "You amputated the brain. SpaceX is hiring." A gasp went through the gallery. The clicking of cameras became a frantic, percussive roar. Senator Brainerd banged his gavel, but the sound was lost in the chaos. Musk held up a hand, and surprisingly, the room quieted, eager to hear what came next. "Let's talk about the hoaxes Dr. Thorne worked on," Musk continued, swiping on his phone. An image of a smartphone displaying a GPS map appeared on the screen. "Senator Brainerd, do you use a map on your phone to get around Washington?" The senator, caught off guard by the direct, simple question, stammered, "Well, yes, of course. Everyone does." "Of course they do," Musk affirmed. "That GPS signal travels 12,550 miles from a satellite to your phone. To do that, it has to pass through the ionosphere and the troposphere, the very atmosphere Dr. Thorne spent his life studying. His team's models correct for atmospheric distortion. Without the work of so-called Deadwood like him, the dot on your map would be off by several miles. You wouldn't be able to find your way to this hearing, let alone navigate a national crisis. That is the first hoax Dr. Thorne helped create. Functional, precise navigation for every single American." He swiped again. A satellite image of a massive hurricane churning in the Gulf of Mexico filled the screen. 2 years ago, Hurricane Ida was bearing down on the coast of Louisiana. The initial models had it making landfall as a Category 3. But a team at NASA, using updated atmospheric river data, a field Dr. Thorne pioneered, revised the forecast. They saw the rapid intensification cycle hours before anyone else. They upgraded it to a high-end Category 4 and accurately predicted the storm surge. That warning, based on the work of the very people you fired, gave tens of thousands of people the extra hours they needed to evacuate. It saved thousands of lives and billions of dollars in emergency response. Another hoax, I suppose. He kept going, his voice a relentless cascade of facts. He brought up images of drought-stricken farmlands in the Midwest. "Senator Brainerd, the farmers in your home state of Alabama rely on long-term seasonal forecasts to decide when to plant and when to hedge their crop insurance. Those forecasts are not magic. They are the result of decades of painstakingly collected climate data, of analyzing jet stream patterns and ocean temperatures. That is the legacy of Eris Thorne. You fire him, you call his work fantasy, but the farmers who vote for you depend on that fantasy to feed their families." The focus of Musk's argument was shifting from a defense of one man to an indictment of an entire worldview. He was systematically dismantling the administration's narrative, not with opinion, but with undeniable, everyday reality. Finally, he turned to the most sensitive subject in the room: national security. "Mr. Gallo, when one of our F-35s is in the air, its pilot is relying on the most precise targeting and navigation data imaginable. When a Reaper drone is flying a surveillance mission over a hostile region, it is constantly adjusting to wind shear and atmospheric density. This data, this critical edge that keeps our soldiers safe, comes from the constant monitoring of our planet. It comes from the work of scientists like Dr. Thorne. To gut these programs, to call them inefficient, isn't just fiscally irresponsible. It is a direct threat to the safety of our men and women in uniform. It is a form of intellectual disarmament." He stopped and looked from a pale-faced Gallo to a sputtering Senator Brainerd. Dr. Thorne's salary was about $170,000 a year. The value his work provides to our GPS systems, our disaster preparedness, our agricultural sector, and our national defense is measured in the hundreds of billions of dollars annually. That is a return on investment that any venture capitalist in the world would kill for. And you call it inefficient. He leaned back in his chair, the presentation finished. True efficiency isn't about blindly cutting line items on a spreadsheet to generate a press release. That's easy. That's lazy. True efficiency is about having the foresight to invest in the knowledge that prevents catastrophic costs down the line. It's the difference between paying a few dollars for a smoke detector and paying millions to rebuild a city block after it has burned to the ground. You are saving pennies by unplugging the smoke detectors, and you're calling it a victory. The room was utterly silent. The press in the gallery were frozen, their fingers hovering over their keyboards, realizing they had just witnessed the defining moment of the political year. Senator Sharma was looking at Musk with an expression of profound respect. Senator Bronard, for the first time in his long career, was speechless. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. He looked at Vincent Gallo for help, but the White House aide was staring blankly at the witness table, his talking points turned to ash in his mouth. He had walked into the room expecting to humiliate a tech billionaire. Instead, he had watched that billionaire systematically dismantle his president's entire policy on live television, using nothing more than a photograph and a series of undeniable facts. The trap had been sprung, but it was the administration that had walked right into it. Without a word, Elon Musk gathered his phone and a single folder from the table, stood up, and walked toward the exit. The room erupted behind him, a cacophony of reporters shouting his name, their questions colliding in the air. Mr. Musk, are you declaring war on the White House? Is SpaceX actively recruiting fired scientists? Was this your plan all along? He ignored all of it, his face impassive as he pushed through the swinging doors and disappeared into the marbled hallway, leaving a political firestorm in his wake. Back in Houston, Dr. Eris Thorne sat on his worn corduroy sofa, his wife Ilara holding his hand so tightly her knuckles were white. They had been watching the hearing on his laptop, the tinny audio filling their quiet living room. When the White House aide had called him Deadwood, Eris had physically recoiled, the casual cruelty of it a punch to the gut. Ilara had muted the sound, her eyes flashing with anger. You don't have to watch this, Ari, she had said, but he had shaken his head and turned the volume back up, determined to hear his own professional eulogy. Then Musk had spoken. When his own face appeared on the giant screen in the Senate chamber, Eris had gasped. He watched, mesmerized, as the billionaire systematically defended not just him, but the very meaning of his life's work. When the final words came, SpaceX is hiring. Eris Thorne finally broke. Tears streamed down his face, silent and heavy. They weren't tears of sadness or self-pity. They were tears of pure, unadulterated vindication. Ilara wrapped her arms around him as he wept. The weight of 30 years of quiet dedication and 1 week of crushing doubt finally finding release. Hours later, on a Gulfstream G650ER slicing through the dark sky back to Texas, the adrenaline had faded, leaving Elon Musk feeling hollowed out and weary. His phone, which had been buzzing non-stop on the table beside him, fell silent as the battery finally died. He leaned his head against the cool glass of the window, watching the blanket of city lights below. He knew the consequences of what he had just done. He had not just challenged a policy, he had publicly humiliated the President of the United States. The retaliation would be swift, personal, and ugly. His phone had been a torrent of notifications, equal parts effusive praise and violent threats. A call finally came through on the jet's satellite phone. It was his mother, May. Elon, she said, her voice a mixture of pride and profound worry. That was a magnificent thing you did, truly. But you are poking a bear, my love. A very powerful, very vindictive bear. The most powerful ones are often the most wrong, he replied, his voice tired but firm. Being right doesn't make you bulletproof, she cautioned. Please, be careful. He promised he would, but as he ended the call, the private cost of the public victory was etched on his face. He had picked a fight, and now he had to see it through. The backlash from the White House was immediate. Vincent Gallo was nowhere to be seen, but the president himself took to his social media platform, posting a furious, all-caps screed calling Musk a traitorous globalist who was sad and pathetic and no friend to America. Pro-Trump news outlets ran segments questioning Musk's government contracts, his patriotism, and his mental stability. The political machine was grinding into gear, attempting to bury Musk under an avalanche of spin and invective. But the narrative was no longer theirs to control. The image of Dr. Thorne's face next to the words, "amputated the brain," was too simple, too powerful to be spun away. Then came the move that changed the entire game. General Marcus Vance, the retired four-star general, who had served as chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff under two different presidents, was a man universally respected for his quiet integrity and apolitical service. He had never once given a political interview since his retirement. The morning after the hearing, he broke his silence. He didn't publish an op-ed. He walked onto the set of the most watched morning news show in the country. He was calm, wore a simple suit, and spoke with the unimpeachable authority of a man who has commanded armies. "I am not here to talk about politics," General Vance began, looking directly into the camera. "I am here to talk about the security of the United States. For more than 20 years, the Department of Defense has identified climate change as a significant threat multiplier. This is not a debate for us. It is an operational reality. It affects naval base placement, resource logistics, and the stability of regions where our troops are deployed. The scientific data that informs these plans is not a hoax. It is a vital strategic asset. A nation that willfully discards its scientific community is unilaterally disarming its own intellect. It's the strategic equivalent of shutting down our satellite surveillance to save on the electricity bill. It's dangerously short-sighted, and it puts American lives at risk." That was it. In 5 minutes, General Vance had reframed the entire debate. It was no longer about Elon Musk versus Donald Trump. It was about national security versus willful ignorance. The White House had no response. Attacking General Vance was politically unthinkable. The ground had shifted beneath their feet. Later that day, seeing the tide had turned, Musk posted a single, clear statement on X. He didn't gloat or attack. He elevated the principle. "This was never about one man," he wrote. "It was about whether we are a nation that builds on knowledge or burns it for political heat. The real space race isn't to Mars. It's a race against ignorance. We intend to win." 3 weeks later, the news cycle had moved on, as it always does, but the echo of that moment in the Senate chamber remained. In a brightly lit gymnasium at Ames High School in Iowa, a 16-year-old student named Leilani Reyes stood nervously beside her science fair project. Her display was covered with satellite maps of the surrounding county, color-coded to show soil moisture levels. Leilani came from a farming family that was deeply skeptical of what they called ivory tower science, and they had gently discouraged her from pursuing a project they felt was a waste of time. She cleared her throat and began her presentation. "My project is about using publicly available satellite data to help local farmers use water more efficiently," she said, her voice growing stronger with every word. She explained how the data, collected over decades by agencies like NASA, could be used to create precise irrigation plans, saving money and conserving a vital resource. For her conclusion, she turned to the small monitor on her table and played the clip of Musk's testimony. The moment he said amputated the brain, she paused it. "A lot of people, maybe even some of us here, think that some science is a waste," she said, looking out at her classmates and teachers. "But the work that Dr. Thorne did, the work he got fired for, is helping me figure out how to help my family and our neighbors keep their farms going for another generation. That's not a waste. That's everything." A smattering of applause grew into a full-blown ovation from her peers. In that moment, a seed of inspiration, planted in the heat of a political battle 1,000 miles away, had taken root in the heart of the country, ready to grow into the future. What is the true cost of dismissing knowledge? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories they don't want you to hear.